my last video, I talked about why I think Tales isn't liked among the TWD fans. So, I wanted to make a follow-up video on what I would have done if I created the show. I think a TWD anthology series is a smart idea, and I love the title. But the way I interpret it is not like Tales of the Walking Dead universe, more like Tales of the Walkers, so I would take it into that direction, giving the title a double meaning. So that means each episode is going to be based on somebody who has already died or we have seen as a walker. I would also connect the characters to the main story so that the audience is more excited and invested in their stories. I love the cover art for Tales, and it has a great intro, so no complaints, no changes there. I would just tweak it to fit my characters instead. And for my version of Tales, I'm going to create 6 new episode ideas. As much as I like the first episode of Tales, I think it could be a webisode instead, so in this hypothetical universe, it's a webisode and not a part of Tales. So my 6 episode ideas are The Little Girl Zombie, Shire Wilt's Estates, Prison Guard, Clara and Eddie, Governor and Penny, and The Men of Oceanside. I'm going to give a quick rundown of each idea, and then I also came up with episode names for each one. So the first episode would be titled, Little Girl? I got this idea from the old webisode on the bicycle zombie. The Little Girl Zombie is the first walker we ever see on the show, and it's what grabbed our attention so many years ago. It's still such an iconic part of the show, and I think showing the story of her family trying to survive at the beginning of the outbreak and trying to get out of town, running out of gas, but the gas station is out, so they set up camp for the night. When all hell breaks loose, the city's being bombed, the dead are coming to life, and all they can do is try their best to protect their little girl. Episode 2 would be called Wolves Not Far. This episode would take place in Shire Wilt's Estate, which was the neighborhood that Noah's family lived in and where Tyrese dies. In one scene on a brick wall behind Michonne, you can actually see written in spray paint, Wolves Not Far. So we can speculate that the wolves killed Noah's family and this entire group of people. So in this episode, you'd really be able to see the downfall of Shire Wilt's Estates and what happened before our group arrived and saw the remains of it. And this would also show the brutality of a minor villain that we only get to see a little bit of in the main show before our group defeats them. Episode 3 would be called Locked In. This would be about the prison before our group arrived. It would show the prison guard locking the prisoners Axel, Thomas, Oscar, Andrew, and Big Tiny in the cafeteria, promising to come back with help, but as we know, they never came back, and help never arrived. We'd follow this guard around, seeing the downfall of the prison and what happened to him. And this episode will also explain the damage that was done to the prison, which allowed more walkers to flood the hallways and the courtyard. Episode 4 would be about Clara and Eddie, back at the start of the apocalypse. I'd call this episode Flight to Hell. This episode would show Clara, a woman Rick met in the woods surrounding the prison. She talked about how during the start of the apocalypse, Eddie and her were at the Atlanta airport, catching a connecting flight to their honeymoon. But the flight got canceled, and they were held in a terminal until the walkers broke in. She talks about how Eddie sacrificed everything for her. This episode would show how they survived the outbreak in the airport, how they made it out of Atlanta, and when Eddie turned, how she couldn't handle losing him, taking his head so she wouldn't have to be alone. Now this one's my favorite idea, and it's what I think would really interest fans in my version of Tales. Episode 5 is called Blood Bonds. It's about the governor and his daughter Penny, and this would show what happened to her. In the show, he states if he had been more murderous from the start of the outbreak, she'd still be alive. But other than that, her death is a bit of a mystery. You never really see any bite wounds on her, so that doesn't mean she was turned by a bite, and I'm taking a little bit of inspiration from the book Rise of the Governor for her death. It would start off showing the two surviving in a small barricaded apartment. Philip later manages to build walls around Woodbury with the help of other survivors. He spends most of his time caring for his sweet daughter Penny and doing what he can to help out around the town. People start to recognize him as the leader. But one day, a group of people climbed the wall without notice due to them not really keeping watch. They weren't worried about the dangers of people, they were more worried about the dangers of the dead. These people find Penny sitting alone at a picnic table coloring in her coloring book when they take her hostage. Philip comes outside with a cup of water to give to Penny, but she isn't where he left her. That's when he hears 3 gunshots ring out from the middle of the streets. He runs to see what is happening, and that's when they see a group of men standing in the streets, holding Penny with a gun to her head. They command the people of Woodbury to leave, that this town was theirs. Philip begs them to let his daughter go, that he'll do anything, and they can all live there together. There's enough space for everyone. He cries, "Please, just don't hurt my little girl." The men don't listen to Philip, killing anyone who argues or tries to fight back. The townspeople quickly flee and hide. Penny manages to wiggle free during this commotion and runs to her father. He picks her up and runs to the gate, leaving Woodbury. As he's running blindly through the woods, he feels something warm and wet running down his stomach. He looks to see Penny is bleeding from her abdomen. He quickly finds a nearby cabin and hunts for first aid supplies. Penny's passed out, pale from blood loss. He tries to stop the bleeding, but it's no use. She dies in his arms in a puddle of her own blood. Fueled by rage and hatred, Philip finds a shotgun in the cabin and heads back to Woodbury to kill the men he blames for the death of his daughter. He gets his revenge, taking them out one by one, saving what's left of the townspeople. They deem him the governor. After the town has a mini celebration, Philip heads back to the cabin to get his daughter Penny. He cups her zombified face in his hands, and he soothes her, telling her it's gonna be okay, and that Daddy's here. She growls at him, reaching for him hungrily. And that's the end of the episode. Last of all, the final episode, episode number 6, would be showing what happened to the men of Oceanside. We know that Oceanside tried to fight back against Negan and the Saviors, losing and leading to the orders of killing every male above the age of 10. But what was their settlement like before they had to flee? What exactly was their battle plan? How did they manage to get away and hide for so long? All this would be answered here, and at the end it would show Negan putting one of the men on his walker gate just to tie it all together. This would be the final episode of the first season, and it would be titled Love and War. The 2 main characters of this episode would be a young couple who tragically don't get their happily ever after. And with that, we've reached the end of what my version of Tales would look like. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any cool episode ideas, comment them below, and I'll see you next time.